there's something called a dark retreat. There's nowhere to go. There's no one to talk to. There's no distraction. There's no internet. There's no movies. There's no books. There's nothing but a concrete floor, the pitch dark, and everything you've ever tried to hide from in your entire life. Go in your bathroom, close your eyes, lock the door, and start counting. When you get to 2,430,000 and a roughly 32, you can open your eyes and walk out of the bathroom. That was my month in the dark.
Traver, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, brother.
How's your day?
I got a fascinating, as a social media person, Adam, I had someone completely mischaracterize my work and then attack me personally. And I was just talking to a buddy of mine. It's happened so often that it's like 5 years ago, this would have ruined my day. Now I'm trying to figure out how to turn it into like a meme or how to turn it into like a testimonial. But it's always interesting as a public person when someone can just look at like a photo that you post and then come after, like he came after me personally saying like, this is why you're divorced. I was like, wow, what an interesting way to live and interact where a photo triggers you so damn much you attack someone online. But other than that, my day's going great. It's beautiful here in Denver. I just jumped to the pool. I have a new dog who thinks so. Just to give you some background, if you know, I was a Division I collegiate swimmer and water polo player. And
wow.
My house has an above ground pool that's 3.5 feet deep. And I have a new dog that feels like I am drowning every time I get in the pool, even though I'm standing up to like my belly button, and the damn thing jumps in and like grabs my arm with its teeth and starts swimming to the shore or to the side every time. So I just went through that little hilarity. So my day's great, man. My day's great.
That's kind of cute. I really like that.
It's really endearing.
It is, yeah. My dog does the same thing. For some reason, freaks out when I go in like water. I don't know what he's thinking, or he just wants to swim with me, but he gets really stressed. I don't know.
Yeah, she gets super stressed. I'm like, I'm fine. I used to be a beach lifeguard. I can, if worse comes to worse, I'm just going to stand up, you know?
I guess I don't understand the concept of standing up.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I've missed my dog. I haven't seen him in a few months. So that's the only downside of the soiree into New York that I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
But
New York City's a tough place for pups.
Yeah, I wouldn't bring him. He wouldn't have a good life. He's got a great life at home. He's got a big yard and everything. It's not meant to be. But you know, look, if we were to explain who you are, your mission, and how you go about what you're doing in an elevator pitch, what would you say?
My mission is a little different, right? So my mission is to create a movement of 1 million men who express their masculinity through both the primal and the divine aspects of masculinity. Now, that takes some nuance to understand. So the sub-mission of it, which is a bit more straightforward, is to end the unnecessary suffering in men so that we end the unnecessary suffering caused by men. Now that, when I say that to people, they're like, okay, cool. Are you a therapist? No, I'm not a therapist. Are you a doctor? No, even though I have a master's in Chinese medicine. I'm a writer who had an idea about a different way that men could live. I presented that idea to the world in a book, and I had men from all over the world flock to me and say, I want to take this idea and adopt it. Please teach me how.
What's the book called quickly, or just to let people know?
Yeah, the book's called Man Uncivilized.
Okay, continue.
And it started, Adam, because I wrote a book before it called Today I Rise. And it was the story of my divorce and heartbreak and how I used both of those to do a lot of really cool things and change my life in a positive manner. And what I didn't expect was how many men would reach out to me after I wrote that book and say, hey, I love this. I've never heard this before. What's next? Right. And so then I created Man Uncivilized, and it started a movement, but it started a business too. right? So it used to be that guys would reach out to me on Instagram and be like, hey, I love this. What do I do? And I'd be like, I don't know. Read it again. And then the business part of my brain was like, oh, shit. We should probably come up with some offerings and some ideas. But also it wasn't just a business concept. I really wanted to teach men from my weird various backgrounds all the ways that I looked at the world and all the ways that worked for me. And I've partnered with some extraordinary therapists, some geniuses, some men who truly, truly, truly see the world in different ways, and have a circle of men who you've had Connor on, who also exist in the world in a very unique way. And so if I could put all of that in like a bottle and sell it to guys, that's really what I do all day long. It's just not in a bottle. It's in writing and videos and teachings and workshops and gatherings and things like that. Yeah,
brilliant. You mentioned the primal and divine and kind of towing that line. Would you say that's kind of partially masculine and feminine, like integrating the two, or would you say it's something different?
In obtuse terms, yes. Even though I would say a man has both primal and divine in them, and a woman has both primal and divine in her. And she will have a divine expression of the feminine and a primal expression of the feminine, just the way a man will have a primal expression of the feminine and of the masculine, and a divine expression of the masculine. But if we get rid of the more branded terms and say to a man, are you living the life that you want to live? Are you creating and building what you want to live into? Beautiful. Out there in the world, that's the external. Do you like your job? Do you like what you do every day? Do you like how you look naked? Are you on purpose? Do you have a mission? Do you know why the fuck you're here? And are you living literally in a way that you want to on the outside? That to me is the primal. The divine is, are you experiencing life on the inside in the way that you want? Are you emotionally intelligent? Do you have great relationships? Are you dealing with anxiety and depression and other things that aren't, say, diagnosable? You're just like, I don't know, I don't like life. I'm angry. I still have trauma from when I was a kid that I haven't worked through. I think my dad's an asshole. Like, that's the internal stuff.
Yep.
That to me is the divine. Or are you connected to something bigger than yourself internally? And are you expressing that in the way that you want to externally?
Okay, brilliant. There's a lot I want to dig into there, and sure. I think we will in a little bit. But let's take a step back, and I just want to get an understanding of you a bit more, because you are the frame that is then spreading these messages, and it's good to understand the context of you, to understand the context of your message. Those nuances allow people to not get triggered from my you know what I mean? Like,
I'm human. Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is what I've done. This is what's happened. This is how we got here. This message is not in isolation. This is a moment to explore deeper.
Yeah.
And I think people really lose sight of that these days, because everyone's just so distracted and just constantly going through sound bites and not going into the depths of ideas. Mm-hmm. And you can see it in how society is kind of leading at the moment. Everyone's angry and chaotic.
Reactive,
very reactive. But also at the same time, I feel there's a spark developing of something more that I haven't noticed over the last, I've noticed it really develop over the last 10 years. And, we can have conversations like this, and my friends who would look at me like an absolute idiot will go, oh, that makes some sense.
Yeah.
which is really positive. But, so going all the way back, is there like a time in your childhood where you can think, this is why I'm here today, and this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing?
I can't put my finger on a specific moment in my childhood, but I will say my childhood was deeply interrupted by the fact that in 5th grade, my family moved from suburban Connecticut, where I was just like running around in the woods and playing soccer and shoveling the driveway when it snowed, to moving to the dead center of Tokyo, Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we lived there for 5 years.
What were you doing?
So, my dad worked for IBM, and it just was, he got transferred over there for work. And so I was 10 years old to 15, and which is a very ripe time to develop patterns, to be imprinted upon, etc. And so I went from a very, very homogeneous community and suburban life to being in a school with kids from 90 different countries.
Yeah, wow.
Like 50 different religions. From like my little gang of skateboarding friends was like a kid from Pakistan, a kid from South Korea, 2 kids from Japan, a kid from America, and a kid from Argentina. And so I think what it did was indoctrinate me into having a view of the world that was far wider than America. And I did get imprinted of like, oh, wow, there are different religions. There are different ways of viewing life. There is this big, wide lens that most of us don't get to see through. And I had no choice but to see through it for 5 years. And so it really left I'll use the word again, like an imprint on me that depending on where you look and how you look, you'll see something completely different.
Yeah.
So I looked at masculinity when I started the search with those same eyes of not like, oh, it's just one or the other, but like, hey, what if we looked at this from 75 different views? What if we looked at it from different feeling states, from different perspectives? Okay, I'll do that. And then present it in a way that I think will be universally accepted, because I'm going to take into account the universality of it, because there's men in every single culture in every single country. So to simply say masculinity is X, which would be my American, every dude needs a pickup truck with balls hanging off the back of it. You got to be like a shotgun in the back, some Bud Light, like that. If I had lived here in the US my whole life, that may be the view, as opposed to, I'm going to take a little bit from Japan. I'm going to take a little bit from South Korea. I'm going to take a little bit from Pakistan. I'm going to take a little bit from India, take a little bit from Brazil, and go, okay, I know men from all of these cultures. And so it was that's a big turning point in my life.
Brilliant. I could only imagine what that does to just a child. And it's probably for the best as well. Like, I think that's maybe one of the best things that could happen to in that time period.
For sure.
That's amazing.
Sure. It was eye-opening, to say the least. Still unpacking it 30 some odd years later. Yeah.
I bet. Okay, so you've been dropped into the middle of Tokyo, into the heart of an international city. You've begun to get a feel for the world around you, and then you've moved into what happened after that? After 15.
I came back to the US, which was an even bigger culture shock to go like, I'm in a standard American high school. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's very academically driven and it's an upper end public school, but it was really shocking in its limitation. And I would say not even just the school, Adam. Like in Tokyo, I could go anywhere, anytime. Their subway system is one of the best in the world. So I could, tell my mom, it's 8 a.m. I'm leaving. I'll be back Sunday night, 2 days from now at 8 p.m. for dinner. I'm staying at so-and-so's house. He lives an hour and a half away, and I'm going to take 4 different subways to get there. And it was like, okay, cool. We'll see you in 2 days.
It's very safe too. It's such a great place.
So safe. So safe. On one level, so safe. Like there's an underbelly to it.
Of course.
But then to come back to Connecticut and be like, oh, I need my mom to drive me to swim practice.
Yeah.
I can't go anywhere for 2 years until I get a driver's license.
Yeah.
And then even when I get it, where am I going to go? What am I going to do here?
Yeah.
So I think it really, it indoctrinated me into an idea of unlimited options, to the feeling, the crippling stifling of like being stifled. Like, I do not like this. I do not like a lack of freedom. I do not like a lack of options.
Sounds like me going back to Australia after New York.
After New York, right? I've had so many friends, man, that couldn't leave New York because they're like, I can literally eat at any of the world's best restaurants in any style, any like particular nationality of food, like that. Where else am I going to live?
But is this a trap? I think that's where we're getting to.
It's the trap, brother. Trust me, it's the trap.
It's a trap.
They've all left. because they're like, I want a backyard for under 25,000 a month.
Stop being poor.
Exactly.
Oh shit. Yeah. Okay. And then you made a note that before we were talking, you said you're you're a college swimmer. I've always found I've got an interesting theory, and I think it's world-class athletes in their high school and college days and gamers seem to be able to handle, like really high-quality gamers seem to be able to handle the world in a different way and seem to be relatively successful in business and various ventures. I don't know what it is. What do you think there was an impact of the sport in the way you view the world?
1,000%. I went on to, I should add that I went on to fight professionally for a couple of years. And so just the simple fact of having discipline in high school, I was getting myself up at 5:15 a.m. and driving to swim practice, from my sophomore year on. And in Connecticut, it was fucking freezing. So like at 5:20 a.m., I'm eating a piece of toast in my kitchen. The rest of the house is asleep. My car is trying to warm up in the driveway week after week, month after month, year after year. And so to then get put in a business situation and look at someone who's like, oh, I'm not really willing to work that hard. And go, oh, I'm going to fucking eat you alive.
Yeah.
Because when I was 16, I was getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like I'll work in 18. I don't care.
Yeah.
So discipline, understanding of goals, seeing hard work get rewarded, that whole cycle, understanding what teamwork is, understanding how to take coaching, understanding how to be with other people in difficult times, how to celebrate wins, how to handle losses. I think it really does prepare you well for the world. Now, if we put that on fighting, then it was, I can take more pain than most people. I fought with a broken neck. I fought with a torn ACL. I had a broken hand for my sophomore year of water polo season. Wow. Right? Like, so it teaches resilience. It teaches resilience, which, from the business world, like you're going to get your ass kicked in the dirt.
Oh my God.
Right? Like people are like, oh, you're so lucky you have a great business. I'm like, you have any idea how many times I've like crawled into bed with my binky, sucked my thumb and cried for 2 hours? Literally, are you fucking kidding me?
And then eventually you go, well, I can't do anything. I can't keep crying. I got to do something. This isn't a solution either. So I know that I've got this probably March this year was one of the hardest time periods I think I've ever had in my business. Like the core business that I do that I've done for a long time is I run events and festivals, and I made the clever decision to try and scale up the business and run 2 back-to-back Saturday, Sunday, 5,000 capacity festivals on one weekend with a team of 4. So I had like this small in-house team and then a bunch of subcontractors, and I was not prepared at all for what was to come. And just to add insult to injury, I lost a boatload of money on the process. But I remember like 3 weeks before the events were about to happen, I was unable to keep up with my emails. We were like inundated with invoices because everyone wanted payment terms up front because they didn't know who it was. I was waking up. I didn't have time for any morning routine. I was waking up and I just got a little chest freezer that we'd put a temperature gauge that turns on and off the power, and we turned it into an ice bath. And I said to myself, every morning I'm going to go in this fucking thing. And I was waking up so miserable. Every morning I'd wake up and I'd lie there and I'd go, fuck. You know what I mean? Like, I got to get out of bed to go do some shit. Yeah. But I promised myself I would sit in the ice bath. And I would get up and I would do it. And my dog would freak out thinking I'm drowning. And then a couple of minutes into it, I'd be okay. and I'd get out and I'd fucking like scream. I'd be like, ah! And then the neighbors would think I'm a psycho. And then after that moment, I'd say to myself, this is the hardest thing that's going to happen to me today.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm ready for war. And I would get into it.
Yeah.
Man, so yeah, that's business.
Yeah. Business is an emotional roller coaster. People don't realize it, man. It's an emotional roller coaster, right? It truly is. So I think, to answer your question, just being put in hard situations on the daily and having to go like, well, I don't want to be here, but I'm here, so let's make the most of it, right? Like, the pool water's freezing, I got to get in it, or I'm about to get the shit beat out of me by someone, but you know what? Like, this is good training. Let's do it. I think that, one of the things I loved about, I taught CrossFit for a number of years and owned a gym, was just the 3, 2, 1, go. We started every workout, and it was like, I don't fucking care if you're ready or not. You got to get ready. Like, that's the gun's going off. You got, and guess what? The thing ahead of you is going to suck.
Yeah.
So ready? Let's do it. 3, 2, 1, go. And I've still used that, in business. I'm like, I don't want to make this phone call. All right, you ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
I like that.
It just helps the mindset. I think it really does sharpen the axe there.
Yeah, I've felt that as well. Using the ice bath analogy again, same deal. 3, 2, 1. Fuck. Let's do it.
Yep.
Let's go.
Yep.
And it's gonna suck.
It's not going to be any better if you wait.
Yeah.
So you might as well get in.
Exactly. A side note of the kind of the sports development, for my experience was I was never very good at anything. I mean, I'm still not, but I can talk to a brick wall and it'll talk back. But but I was 16. I remember this vividly. There was a moment that just clicked, and I played basketball my whole life. I was never good at it. I was never confident. I didn't really put in the work. You need to go to practice, and then you need to practice afterwards, and you need to embody this experience. But at some point in my life, I started playing World of Warcraft, maybe 15, 16. And I did whatever else did. And then I got into there's an element of it which is called an arena. So it's like you find a team of 3 and then you fight another team of 3. And there's there's careers made out of this, like gamers. It's like the most exciting part of the thing in my mind. And I started to get really good at it. I was this 15-year-old kid playing against 30-plus-year-olds, on the microphones and talking and building the teams and kind of coordinating things. And we got, I think at one point, and also had the worst internet in the world. So I was like fighting. You've got this person in America with the internet, a latency of 10, and I've got 250, and I'm like, at the elite levels, that's enough to win and lose a game. But I would spend my time during my not fighting hours watching YouTube videos, going and like practicing and just like playing around. And then I had this moment of clarity that I clicked and I said, I've never been good at anything in my life. And through consistent effort, making a study of it and actually watching videos and practicing and playing around, I was able to get to, at one point, I think we were like 30th in our ranking in one of the hardest battle groups, in one of the hardest areas of, to explain it, but basically the battle groups of the different like servers. There's some really tough battle groups, and we were 30th in the world at one point.
That's crazy.
But I remember just going, oh shit, I can get good at anything,
right,
with consistent effort and making it a study.
Yeah. And
that was the moment. And now it changed. Like my new hobby is chess, and I'm just playing chess online and watching videos. And I know if I keep doing it, I'll get better, and I'll keep getting better. It's up to me how far I want to go, and how much of a commitment I want to make it. So I think they have similar pathways, and it's a great
mindset, right?
It is. It's
the agency of no one's going to do this for me, but if I just stick with it, I will get better.
Yeah,
I will get better. period. Like the nature of the beast is you just got to stay in there. You got to keep trying. I think that's why a lot of athletes are successful in business. And I'll go back to resilience and dealing with hardship. How many people do you know who have started a business or started a podcast or started something? You know the average numbers, right? Like the average podcast never gets past the 3rd episode. That's the fucking average.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everybody who's above 3 is fucking up that average. Yeah. That means there's infinitely more people who do 1 or 2 episodes and quit right there.
Yeah. Well,
so
that's
really telling.
Yeah. When we started the podcast, so previously I had a co-host and she finished up because she's working on a school development project in Kenya. But I said to myself, I'm going to do 20 episodes minimum. There's no way I'm not doing 20 episodes. And she quit at number 17. So I've been learning the whole process of editing and developing a podcast and just silently rebuilding everything in the background. And I think we're up to episode 29 now. So I think this would be 29. So we blew past, I think it's like the top 1% now. We're like,
you're in the
is it 20 episodes? I've just got started.
Like, think about that.
Just got started.
I think I've done almost 400 episodes. And what I've learned about interviewing, what I've learned about reading people, the comfort level, the ones where everything goes wrong, like, you know, the tragedy episode, like I can't imagine quitting at 20.
Yeah.
Like
it's only the beginning. It's only the beginning.
Even started yet. Yeah.
It's very exciting. That skill of interviewing is an unbelievable skill to develop.
Period. It's like public speaking for business. Yeah. Like I would tell people, like, start a podcast, go to Toastmasters. You will blow away 99% of your business competition because you can tell a story, you can stand in front of a room, and you're actually going to be like, no, really, tell me more. Or your interview flag will go up and be like, hey, I caught you say that thing. You kind of breezed through it. And we can get back on track. I remember interviewing a guy and he's like, yeah, and then I had cancer in my 20s, and he like carried on with the story. And like a minute later, I was like, hello. So we're gonna backtrack just a tiny bit because you just jumped over like the largest. It was testicular cancer for a guy. Like, hello. Man. I noted something that you just wanted to. Anyway, yeah, it's magic.
It is magic. You probably notice I do this a bit. I think it's the ADHD brain. It's like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. So
that's
it's ADHD,
man.
With an engineering process, because I studied engineering at uni. So you've got this wild brain, and I just go little notes, systems, and we'll see what happens. So looping back to 20 minutes ago, you made a brief mention of toxic of masculinity. I'd love to know what you think of your definition of what toxic masculinity is and what divine masculinity is, and how do you get from toxic to divine?
I don't believe in toxic masculinity. One of the chapters of my book is the toxic masculinity myth. Okay. So I believe in traumatized little boys who grow up into be traumatized men. I believe in hurt people who hurt people. I believe in really shitty activities that can be done by any human. And I believe in a catchphrase that makes people feel good about themselves and lets them sleep at night, being like, oh, that's toxic masculinity. Right? So I work with some of the best therapists on the planet. And the things I hear in workshops, in men's gatherings, in circle, that men have lived through will blow your fucking mind. They break my heart. To the point where after some of these things, I've had to go sit with a therapist myself and just say, I don't know how to be in the world knowing that the guy in front of me at the supermarket who's a little cranky with the supermarket checkout person who's going to get labeled as toxic masculine had to dig a hole when he was 5, put his dog in it and shoot it because his mom was off of her meds and that's what she made him do. Or that guy who's afraid to go out, is afraid to commit in relationship, right? So he fucks a lot of women. He just dates around, drinks a bit too much. And we go, oh, you're toxic masculine. that guy watched his stepfather beat the shit out of his mom till he was 15 and then pulled a gun on him. Right? And I know these are some of the more extreme stories, but to me, it's such a disservice to the pain that men carry, the struggle that we put them through societally, even though we are, quote, the top of the food chain and the patriarchy. We still do not allow men to have permission to express and feel pain. Deep, deep pain. So when I hear the term, I'm like, cool, it's the boogeyman.
Yeah.
It's the boogeyman. It's like, cool. All right, cool. You get to sleep at night. You get to be like, oh, that's just toxic masculinity. But why aren't you addressing the root of the problem? Why aren't you addressing the root? Do you really want to, quote, solve toxic masculinity? Cool. Tell me how much you're advocating for literacy. Tell me how much you're advocating for men to be in therapy. Are we actually advocating for equality in the jobs that require men, specifically men, to kill and die in exponentially higher numbers than we do anybody else? Like when I got asked about this a couple of years ago, Adam, I remember saying, and this was like, it was very upsetting for people to hear. We will always have, quote, toxic masculinity as long as we task men to do our killing and dying for us. Right? We need a certain population, a certain part of the population to be like, hey, there's some bad shit happening out there. Go deal with it. We need that. So unfortunately, there's a bleed over into the rest of the group that goes, oh, but my people are the ones that need to go to the front line here. My people are the ones. It's okay if they die at work. They're men. It's all right. Like we're not having not riots, but what am I thinking of? Like large gatherings of people, protests in the street at men's suicide rates, at how many men die in oil rigs, at how many men die at work, at how many men die at war. Like we're not having protests around this. We're having protests because there aren't equal amount of men and women in STEM careers. Now, I'm not saying that there's not misogyny. There's a ton of misogyny. I'm not saying that men don't do awful shit in the world. I will be the first to raise my hand and say, men do awful shit in the world. Now tell me why.
Hurt people, hurt people.
Hurt people, hurt people. Right? Once you've been in the work for a bit and hear the stories and know the things that men are carrying, I'm actually surprised that there isn't more. Like I sat with a guy 2 weeks ago at a workshop after hearing his story and said, I am proud that you are not like a heroin addict or a serial killer. Because if I had to live in your house as a kid, I probably would be one of the two. Now, society would look at him and go, oh, he's an alcoholic, toxic masculinity. When he gets drunk, he screams at people, toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Right? He gambles too much, toxic masculinity. But they're not willing to look at what caused all of that. So I know it was a bit of a different way to answer the question.
Answer it how you want to answer it. It's okay.
To get to divine, we have to get through trauma. We as a culture and a society have to say, men, you have been traumatized. Big T and little t. Right? You have been traumatized. We as a society have put expectations on you that are unrealistic emotionally. Every member of society, we're all a little bit complicit, men and women. Right? There's studies done that mothers are harsher on the emotionality of little boys oftentimes than fathers are. So we're all
what do you mean? Sorry. Elaborate.
Meaning that a mother will shame her son for crying more prevalently than a father will. Though we look at it and be like, dads are the ones that will be like, there's no crying in this house. Don't be a pussy. But it's actually mothers who will be more upset with their son's emotionality than fathers will.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Fascinating, huh? So again, like we're all in this. We're all in this. So until we really look at, okay, why do so many men come back from war? And the VA just goes like, hey, cool, here's some OxyContin. I know you have PTSD. Like, we'll see you in 2 months. Or why aren't there mental health programs for law enforcement, for first responders, for firemen? Why isn't that a requirement? Then I'm interested in the conversation. Like when people go, okay, cool, we're going to actually protest in the streets, not defund the police. But why is it that my cop friends have walked into houses and seen dead kids?
Yeah.
Have had people blow their brains out in front of them? And then those guys need to go home, take a shower, try to get some sleep, and they're back again 12 hours later. Like, I just got chills on my arm. Right? Like, that to me, like, don't even bother me with the question about toxic masculinity until you really address that stuff. Now, it exists. So how do we get to the divine? One, we actually have to tell men, we need you. We spent 30 years telling men, we don't need you. We actually don't even want you around. You guys are expendable. You're toxic. Get rid of you.
Yeah.
Right? We can't do that until we can actually celebrate the parts of masculinity that we still love and cling to. Now, my invitation for men is we're going to take some of the old ways. We're going to keep them. We're not going to take all of them. I do not want to go back to the 50s. I'm not one of those people that are like, you know, when everything was great for everybody in the 50s. I don't think so. But I think there were aspects of masculinity. There are aspects that are traditional, of leadership, of service, of protection, of provision, of boldness, of stoicism, right? Of going out there and doing things, of adventure. And those need to get tempered with the divine. Men need to understand our emotions. We need to understand how to express our emotions. We need to understand how the world works on a relational level, Adam. We're not really good at relationship. And I'm not just talking about romantic. I'm talking about being in relationship with nature, being in relationship with our bodies, being in relationship with our feelings, being in relationship with our brothers, being in relationship with the feminine, as opposed to trying to dominate and control it. Like, both sides are equally getting fucked here.
Domination.
Go ahead.
Domination and control, from my experience, comes from a place of fear a lot of the times.
It comes from a lack of trust.
Yeah, which is fear. Fear of
exactly.
Fear of pain, you know?
Yeah. Or there's, you know, like, I'm just going to put the tiny little asterisks out there of like psychopathy and sociopathy.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say like, oh, you know what those guys, the pure psychopaths need? They need like one of my workshops and some therapy and some organic salad, and they're going to be great.
Do you think you break at some point?
What's that?
I think about this a lot. New York's a very crazy place on all extremes, like crazy beauty and then crazy like levels of pain and anguish and, you know, addiction and, you know, so many problems there. And I walk past people sometimes and I think, how did you get to this point and what could have changed that? And I don't have an answer for those things. I've thought about bringing someone in for a podcast episode, but I think it'll be a challenging episode. So it's something that I'm going to do at some point. I just don't know how to approach it. But I think about that so much. And then I look at the friends that I have in my life and I think, which one of you is going down this path and I just don't see it? So I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
Have you ever seen the YouTube series, The Soft White Underbelly?
No.
It is that. It is someone going to a heroin addict, a pimp, a prisoner, a divorce attorney even. Like this guy just interviews like the people who are on that side of society.
Wow.
It's fascinating. And it unfortunately, the root of it often is like trauma. They grew up in a house where they were abused. They grew up with parents who had mental illness. Like, we also can't discount mental illness. It's an actual thing. It's a real thing that a lot of people struggle with. And I think a lot of people struggle with it for organic reasons. And a lot of people struggle with it because of how our civilized society is set up, where the food is toxic, where we're addicted to our phones and to our squares, where we're working 6-7 days a week to almost make ends meet, where our relationships are based on superficiality or alcohol. Like, that's a setup. I don't care who you are. You live that for long enough and you're going to end up in some capacity challenged. So humaning is hard, brother. It's fucking hard, right?
Yeah.
There's a reason why I named my entire thing Uncivilized. And I got a lot of kickback from that in the beginning. But I was like, hey, tell me about your civilized world. Do you want me to walk through the
chaos.
streets of downtown Denver? You're going to tell me that's civilized?
Yeah.
You want me to go to New York City to the drug districts and go like, hey, this is civilized? You want me to talk to a 15-year-old prostitute and tell me that's not, this is how we do. Right? There's child sex, like there's all this stuff that still exists in the civilized world.
Yeah. Well, this leads into probably the core of it. People are happy to be enraged, but not actually interested in doing anything about it.
1,000%.
It's like the amount of times I've had conversations with people and, you know, they say, this is a problem and this is a problem, this is a problem. And it's like, great, pick one. Actually do something.
Yeah.
Actually do something. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Like, stop talking about it. Like, talking about it helps. It's the top of funnel. If we're going to market, it's literally the top of this.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go until something's resolved.
Yeah, brother. When I was living in New York 5-6 years ago, it was during Me Too. Right. So every morning I'd wake up and there'd be some article or some interview or something that, first of all, I'm really glad Me Too happened. I think it needed to be known just how prevalent shitty male sexual behavior was. Yeah. And on some level, female behavior, but it's like 99 to 1%. Yeah. And so I kept reading article after article after article. The boys aren't okay. Men are fucked up. Men need to do this. Men are this. Men are this. And I would literally get to the bottom of the article and be like, but where's the solution? Now here's what you do about it section. Yeah. Every single time. That is literally why I started Uncivilized. Yeah. I remember telling a coach at the time, I was like, bro, I'm going to do this. I'm going to finish these fucking articles because I think I know what to do. I was like, I know this is audacious. It may sound arrogant. I'm going to do it. And God bless him. He was like, go do it. Yeah. Someone needs to do this. But that's not where you're right. The top, most people want to sit at home on their couch and be like, man, everything's all jacked up. By the way, please pass the Doritos, the vodka, the Oxys, and the remote. And let me numb out for a couple more hours.
Yeah, it's too much. It's too much. And this leads into probably the next part that I do want to get to, but I just want to keep going on this for a second. There is something that I came across a little while ago that I didn't quite understand, that I think is important, the equality elements of male and female. I'm using male and female very clearly because it's very different to masculine and feminine. I think we need to begin to separate men, women, masculine, feminine, because there are very masculine women that behave like men, and there are very feminine men that behave like women, but they're not. They're just biologically what they are, and then in their emotionally and the way they engage with the world, they are on a spectrum of masculine and femininity.
Sure.
And I think people don't quite understand. And then I think that's where the toxic masculinity element comes in, because people don't really see and understand that spectrum. Yeah. But I've always, I've had a bit of a confusion for a while with the pushing of, women into STEM, for example. But recently I had this experience of somebody saying to me that whole see me, be me thing. And I didn't really, it clicked, that moment it clicked, because I was like, okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't know there is another option, you don't ever try. And to see there's another option, you need to see it through people that are doing what,
for sure,
what you want to do. And it really hit home. I understood that on maybe a theoretical level, but not on an emotional level. But recently I listened to a podcast episode on the guy, what's his name? Rick Rubin. Rubin.
Yeah.
So Rick Rubin, I listened to a podcast on his book, and he is one of the most successful producers in the world, and he doesn't play an instrument. Now, I've been in music for a long time, and I have DJed for a long time. And there's another part to DJing, which is writing music and actually releasing stuff. And I've not spent the time or energy to sit at a computer and develop that long skill set of actually writing the music on, electronic music. But I know I have a great ear, and I know I can compose really great ideas, but I've never done it because I was too afraid of people calling me a fake. And then I listened to this podcast, and I heard one of the best producers, the most well-respected producers in the world, is a guy that sits in the studio with the musicians and listens and does nothing more.
Never played an instrument. Yeah.
Never played an instrument in his life. And then I thought, oh shit, I just understood the see me, be me thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that's led to me to think, okay, I do have more of a duty to lift up those that are, don't have as many opportunities in those certain elements if they want.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's a choice, not a choice. Shouldn't be forced.
Right. It's a choice.
Like, you don't have to do any of this shit. It's okay for a woman to be a housewife. Like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And I speak to so many women now that are like, I don't want to fucking go get I don't want to hustle, and I just want to have some babies and like chill. It's like, yeah, great.
1,000%.
It's a choice.
That pendulum is actually swinging back. You see a lot of kickback against the like girl boss babe thing.
Girl boss light, one of my friends said.
Just like it's okay for men to be stay-at-home dads.
Yeah.
Like we need to balance both sides of it out.
It's masculine and feminine. That's where the separation, like staying at home, looking after the children, raising the house is a feminine quality. It's a nurturing feminine quality. You don't have to be a man or a woman to have that quality.
1,000%. I want people. I got asked this a couple of weeks ago. Like, do you think men should be doing like traditionally male things? I was like, no. I want the full spectrum. From and we'll use like very stereotypical, like a poetry writing, ballet dancing, like figure skating guy, all the way to a Navy SEAL who just got out of the NFL. I want men to be able to choose completely all sides of that spectrum, completely open. You are a man at every single one of those points, and that you are equally as much of a man at every single one of those points, if it's done by choice. If you sat there in the fire long enough to be like, I want to be one or the other or somewhere in the middle, to me, you're spot on. Go for it. I will call you uncivilized. I will call you a man. I don't give a fuck. It's not about picking specific roles, but it's also not about then poo-pooing if men want to go a certain direction, right? There's also not protests outside of my jiu-jitsu school because it's 98% sweaty dudes who put pajamas on and try to choke each other. We're not like, hey, how come, what's wrong with society? Look at all this misogyny going on in here. There's only 2 women. Where I go to my girlfriend and was like, hey, do you want to come do jiu-jitsu? She's like, that sounds fucking awful. Do you want to come to dance class tonight? And I'm like, God, that sounds terrible. Is there any choking? Yeah, like, are you allowed to touch
She's
people?
Like, I'll choke you afterwards if you can.
So we as a society are in a tough place where we're advocating for things that people may not necessarily want. Yeah. In the name of equality, right? As opposed to, why don't we celebrate both sides equally? That's where I think we're missing. And
I think we are getting there. I think people are slowly getting there, and the pendulum does need to swing. It's just the nature of human society. We're not perfect, and we kind of go a bit this way, and then we go a bit this way, and we slowly, painfully move forward. As long as it's done with intent. With good intent, I think, as well, and sometimes bad intent. But let's loop back to pain, and then the inability for us to understand and process pain as a society, and that how that is leading into the problems that seem to be impacting men, on a violence level and all those elements. And you're 28 days in silence. Oh, sorry, you're 28 days in alone in
the dark. Yeah.
In the darkness. Yeah.
Sure.
So what happened? What is the story behind this? Like, why did this happen?
Around the dark.
Yeah. Why did you do this?
I'll give people context. There's something called a dark retreat, where you get to choose a certain amount of time to be in a pitch black room. I know Aubrey Marcus has now done a week. Aaron Rodgers.
So what's it called again?
A dark retreat.
A dark retreat. I've never heard of that before.
Yep. So a couple mainstream people have done it, more bigger players than I am. They each did a week.
For now.
It's like kind of in the conversation or kind of in the space. I actually, this is a side note, sat down with a book publisher last week. I was like, I need to write a book about my month in the dark.
You should.
They were like, please do this. We definitely have not seen anything like it.
I've never seen it. Yeah, dude. Put 10
so
AC
imagine,
down.
here's sort of the sales pitch. Go in your bathroom, close your eyes, lock the door, and start counting. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. When you get to 2,430,000 and a roughly 32, you can open your eyes and walk out of the bathroom. That was my month in the dark, with the caveat being I was fed 3 times a day because this was organized at an ashram. But it was about that much space, and it was about that many amenities. Like, I was on a concrete floor. I had a yoga mat, a meditation cushion, and a tiny little mattress and a loft that was horribly uncomfortable. So why did I spend a month in there? I was doing a year-long project called the Year to Live Project. I had gotten divorced. My ex-wife had a miscarriage. We got divorced. My business partnership fell apart. Like, I had the classic, I'm about to turn 40. Now I've lost everything. What do I do with myself? For a year, I lived the entire year as if it were my last year alive.
My co-host did this. My co-host said this exact same thing.
So powerful.
Wow.
So in January of that year, I didn't have this event planned. I go to a men's workshop with a guy named Robert Masters. And there was a man there who heard about my year. And he pulls me aside and he goes, if you really want to understand death without really dying, you should do a dark retreat. And I was like, what the fuck's a dark retreat? And he explained that he had done 180 days broken up into sections, right? So not straight.
I was going to say, holy shit.
Yeah, crazy. The longest they'll let you do is 49 days.
So, Connor said that you might be looking to do something like that. You're going again?
2025, I'm going in for 49 days.
Jeez. We should do another episode when you come on the other side and talk about it.
I'm going in on my 49th birthday.
Brilliant.
And so I want to do the next 49 days. He said, like, you really want to get down to the root of things. Again, like, do you want to know what it's like to experience death without dying? Now, here's the fun part, Adam. I was like, so tell me about your experience. He's like, oh, when I did it the first time on day like 38, 39, they had to pull me out because I was bleeding from my eyes, ears, and mouth. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, yeah, he did it in Tibet. He goes, the Tibetans told me, this is what he says, the Tibetans told me I got so deep in my meditations that I experienced demons. And now I'm a white kid from Connecticut, right? And I'm captivated in this story. I'm sitting there trying to eat my lunch, and I was like, did you experience demons? And he's like, nah, I think I got food poisoning. But either way, they had to pull me out. But that night, I signed up. Like, I reached out to a couple places. One of them got right back to me, and I was like, hey, I want to do 28 days. And the woman running it was like, that is a long time. We don't recommend you do that. And I said, you know what? This is what I feel called to do. I want to be in for a long time. Like, I want to cook. I have a different mind, I think, than most people. I have a meditation practice over 20 years.
I want to simmer.
Yeah. I wanted to be in too long to white knuckle. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I flew down there and...
When was that? What was the point past where you're like, all right, this is too long to white knuckle?
It probably took me 8 or 9 days to fall apart. Like I had a little workout routine. I had a meditation routine. I knew when the meals were coming. But on the 8th night, I had a dream that I was walking down a beach with my ex-wife, I was in the middle of getting divorced from, holding the hand of the child that she had lost in pregnancy the year before. That was my dream. And I woke up from that and I fucking lost it. There's nowhere to go. There's no one to talk to. There's no distraction. There's no internet. There's no movies. There's no books. There's nothing but a concrete floor, the pitch dark, and everything you've ever tried to hide from in your entire life. So that's when I realized, like, okay, it's on.
Jesus Christ.
The room now had me, and then the woman who sort of guided me through this beforehand was like, it's a thing in there. Like an organic process will happen to you whether you want it to or not. Your job is to surrender to it, almost like an acid trip or an ayahuasca experience or mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like once you're in, it kind of takes over and you're kind of fucked for a while. It was that.
Yeah. I kind of hate you a little bit right now because you've opened something that I'm going to have to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, fuck you. I'm just saying this. I'm like,
I should get like an affiliate link or something. I make $10 every time someone does a fucking dark. It's real, man. It's a real thing. Like the darkness, Adam, is an entity. Like I don't know how to describe it except that like it gets in your crevices. It becomes oppressive. It feels like being underwater. There's just darkness everywhere.
What's on the other side of that?
Like what happens when the door opens?
No. Like, okay, so this is going to sound a little bit esoteric, but
go for it.
I am a big proponent personally of doing once a year, just doing a solid amount of mushrooms or like so I went to the Catskills a couple of weeks ago and I just had 3 grams of mushies. Beautiful, by myself. Yeah. Put a fire on and I did them and I sat. And there's a very loose idea that I still haven't quite figured out, but the darkness prompted this, that what you just said prompted this idea. I felt something like there's a whole spirituality element and there's all these like things going on while I'm tripping, but then it's like it's in a box and that box is my perception, but once you get past it, there's something more. So, and the only way to get past, and you can't control, you can't try and grab onto it. You can't try and say, I'm doing this. Right. It's like in the process of letting go, you bypass to the next thing, the next whatever it is. Now, when you said the darkness envelops you and it's oppressive, what happens when you let go? And what happens when you fully accept and embrace that darkness? What did you get that far?
I did. And this will sound odd, but it comes with like a full acceptance of death. And so the man who told me, if you want to understand death, go in there, was spot on. Because it fundamentally changed who I am, because for a day or two, I thought I may have died. And that this all was a hallucination. This was like, this is what happens to you after you die. Right? And so when I came out of that hallucination, no, I think I'm alive. I hope. This is like some weird simulation.
How did we get here?
Yeah, it's fucking creepy. And it's hard to articulate. Except if you sit around a cocktail party and be like, hey, what would you do if you only had 1 year left to live, right? I remember like having that conversation with people. And they'd keep it in their heads. Like, oh, I'd go to Paris. Oh, I'd have a threesome. Oh, I'd like try to learn to surf or play the guitar. Right. And I'm like, cool. What would you really fucking do? And that's when I'd get people in the heart of like, I'd leave my marriage. I'd go back to grad school. I'd move to France. I don't like it here. Like, I'd get people to get real. And so I can say to you, like, Adam, do you know someday you're going to die? And you're like, conceptually, yes. Like, logically, I'm educated. I understand that I'm not going to live forever.
Well, I'm working on it.
When it drops down into your heart or into your body, it's a knowing. Like, I actually don't have that much time here.
Dude,
and,
I've got
what
this.
That gives me, though, is pure freedom. Because I came out of that room and I wrote my books. Because I didn't give a fuck whether anybody read them. I didn't give a fuck whether anybody liked them. I knew I was going to take a shot at the world. And if I failed, I was going to be just as dead as if I was a New York Times bestseller 10 times over, right?
I love that sentence.
Does that make sense?
I don't give a fuck what I'm going to do because I'll be just as dead at the end of this.
Think of how freeing that is.
Oh, right? I love it.
That is actual freedom. Now, I'm not a bad actor, so I didn't go rack up a bunch of credit card debt and hurt people. I said, I'm going to try to do something incredible for masculinity, for the world's idea of masculinity. Because I can come back anytime I put a blindfold on, which I've done repeatedly, or been in a pitch black room again, I come back, that's like, woof.
Yeah.
I'm only here for that long.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
It makes complete sense.
Hard to articulate because I lay on the floor and felt that.
Yeah.
Of like how insignificant I am, as well as the grand opportunity that I have to shoot for in front of me. And both have to be true.
It's quite an irony, isn't it? It's like we are nothing, but also in our nothingness, we can do so much. It's like, what? What does that even mean?
Duality, right? Right. Bro, how high are you? Right?
I've been on that note, I'm nearly a year sober.
Fuck yeah, brother. Good for you, man.
So
huge, huge.
I don't count. Mushrooms are a tool, but
If you're taking them and watching The Simpsons, then you haven't been sober. But if you're going out to the Catskills, but that's why I did it, and I think that has still carried with me. And I'll tell you, it comes with a bit of a cost. That there are oftentimes I don't really understand what we're doing here. Because it's all going to end in 40 years anyway. And there are times when I know, I've only got 40 more years. I better make the most of every fucking second. So it's this sort of flip-flop, right? Of like an existential crisis and a deep focus and purpose.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to answer the first question, none of it really matters, but also it really does matter because if we take, a bird's eye view of this, all of these little interactions and this interaction between you and I and this, however many people listen to this, and then it all leads a human society forward. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
At a very core level, we are probably a blip on the universe's radar, but whatever you believe, whether you believe it's a, there's other life out there or it's just us, fuck it. You know what I mean? like this is great. I'm having a great time. I don't know about you, but
surfing's awesome. Thank God someone invented surfing. I'll stay here as long as you guys want.
Yeah, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, who cares if none of this shit matters? Because what's the alternative?
Right.
What is the alternative?
I don't think there is one.
There isn't. There is chaos. There is chaos, and there is like pain, and there is addiction, and there is making not good use of your limited time on this earth.
Yeah. If I can throw something in real quick, I was in a workshop a month ago with it. Do you know who Hallett Gracie is? You ever heard that name?
Is that a jiu-jitsu guy?
Yeah, his dad, Horian. So he's in the Gracie family, which is essentially jiu-jitsu royalty. And he comes in this workshop.
I used to do jiu-jitsu, so
you get it, right? Like, so he, one of the founding fathers, let's call it, is his dad. So he said this. He said, I look at the thread that has happened from the beginning of time of people trying to learn martial arts and figure out how to fight. He said, I'm grateful to just be here for one little second of that thread with my unique contribution to it. And I remember sitting in the back of the workshop and thinking, wow, I bet you men have been getting together since the beginning of time and trying to figure out how to be better men, stronger men, more potent men, kinder men. I'm so grateful to just be here for one little second of this conversation that's been here since the beginning of time and will continue on long past me. And that kind of settled me. I was like, okay, cool. Teach us how to choke each other.
Yeah.
Well, really helped.
This comes down to something really important in the masculinity conversation, which is when you don't feel, like, just using my experience, for example, and maybe partially martial arts and my experience with martial arts, when you feel as a masculine man, or as a man generally, when you feel powerful and when you feel in part somewhat like, you know, powerful and strong, there is peace. And what people do to you doesn't matter, because, you know, I remember when I was younger, I did jiu-jitsu till I was about 18 for a few years, and I was a scared little boy. And then I learned how to do arm bars, and I learned that I could take someone to the ground and beat the shit out of them. And I would do competitions. I was like this 16-year-old kid. This is after World of Warcraft, but before bodybuilding. Right? And I was this kid, and I was long and limber and like great triangles. And I went to a competition and nearly beat, I did an open weight competition and nearly beat this like 6'10" jacked dude, because he underestimated me, and I got on his back and I fucking choked, and he got into the ground, and then all he did, he was like, wait, this is a kid, and he just gets my arm and just bends it. But I'm like, you know, it's pretty I was like pretty close. Yeah. But I realized, you know, in that moment that it's like, you are a lot more, I'm a lot more powerful. And in that process, someone wanted to like fight me, or someone was like problematic, I wouldn't react, because I'd go, are you sure? And then in that moment of that calmness, in that moment of aggression, would scare the shit out of people. You're like, I don't want to fuck with this guy. Yeah. And that, I think, is at the core, the, like, you know, using the word, going back to divine masculinity or whatever, that at the core of it is that masculinity in its best form. It's like, I will fuck you up if I need to, but I will not. Yeah. Because there's no point and it doesn't matter. Great. And if you can apply that to so many different elements, that's the space where, you know, the feminine women feel safe and comfortable, and ability to like open up and let go, and that's, I think, is really missing, because the masculinity is being pushed down and called a problem. Yeah. But it's a beautiful part of the whole human experience if done right. I don't know if I had a point to that, but like,
we have an ethos at Uncivilized, and the third ethos tenet is be dangerous but not a danger. And that is what you're speaking to. Be dangerous. You're dangerous as a jiu-jitsu player, but you're not a danger, because you're like, bro, I do this every day at 4:00 on the mat. Like, I don't need to do this with you. And you're a civilian. Yeah. And then I get to stand next to you as someone who's never done jiu-jitsu and feel the safety in you. My partner gets to feel that every time we go to sleep. Like, I'm not a danger. Someone breaks in the house, you're going to see what dangerous is. But I'm not a danger. I don't drink. I'm not going to fly off the handle. I've done my work. I've gone to therapy. Right? I know why I'm here. Imagine if that was the goal of masculinity, as opposed to how much money can I make, how many women can I fuck, and how many McLarens can I buy. which is the egoic masculinity, which will lead you to simply be a danger over and over and over and over and over. In pursuit of things that have been disconnected, your heart has had to be disconnected from. Any man who's a danger is disconnected from his heart. I think that's the real conversation around masculinity. Isn't weakening it, isn't it watering it down, right? I always say we threw the toxic baby out with the masculine bathwater. Like, okay, well, shit. Well, okay, so we don't want men, but we sort of need men. That point that you just made is paramount for men. Now, dangerous can be all kinds of different definitions. I don't care if people do jiu-jitsu. If you can meditate for an hour, you are dangerous. You are not going to be influenced. You will not be thrown off track. If you eat the right foods, you're going to be thinking clearly. Your processes will go faster. Your health is going to be in a different situation. You are dangerous in a room full of people who are pre-diabetic, but you're not a danger. If your relationships are solid with your friends, especially men to men, if you have a group of men around you, you're not going to get knocked off kilter. And if you do, because life happens and bad shit happens, you're going to have 15 hands, 16 hands pull you up. You're not going to be a danger. You're not going to be a danger to yourself. And
call you on your bullshit as well.
And call you on your bullshit.
I think that's the key thing. We've lost that community in isolation. So there's men running around not getting checked by their friends. For sure. Which is why, we can go back to a jiu-jitsu school. You got the new aggressive white belt. They're going to be like, cool, you skinny little purple belt, go whoop his ass a bunch of times. Put him in check. Yeah. We really need that structure, right? One of my teachers and mentors, the guy that does our workshops with us, is named Dewey Freeman. He's this savant equine therapist. And he said first day, equine therapist, like with horses, uses horses for therapy. You ever heard of that? Sorry, no.
You got to get this guy on, Adam. You got to get him on.
Intro me. Let's do it.
Will. He will take the most traumatized people on earth that have lived through the worst shit you can ever imagine and put them next to a horse or onto a horse, and they will heal.
What?
It is bonkers. There's a lot more to it than that. I'm giving you like the 5 second.
Oh, man. This has to happen.
But the first time I met him, he said horses need 2 things. They need to feel safe and they need to know where they fit in the pack. And I was like, horses need that? That sounds like like that's what I'm trying to figure out at your house, you know? But that in itself, we can look at the societal issues, or we can look at addiction, we can look at suicide, we can look at obesity, we can look at the domestic violence and go, do people feel safe? Do they know where they fit in? If they don't, then they're probably going to be the cause of one of those things, or they will be the result of one of those things. That is the root, brother. Like, that is the core thing that we are totally discombobulating in Western society. Kids don't feel safe because they're not on their phones all day. Like, they can't get from A to B without, map questing it. They don't know what to eat. They don't know who to hang out with. They don't know if they're being sabotaged online behind the scenes. They don't know who's a predator, who's prey. Like, it's absolutely confusing, right? Yeah,
do you think that's come from access to information, too much information, maybe?
I think it comes from a disconnection of what's true. So
through a lot of noise, through too much information, maybe.
Through not enough sitting around a fire, through not enough challenge out in the wilderness. Right?
Yeah.
It's not real. Like the dude when we opened up, who messaged me, that's not real. That's some dude on the internet telling me he doesn't like my work. Now, if I'm sitting out in the woods and a lightning storm happens, that's real. I got a real issue. Right? If I'm starving, that's real.
You know what's funny? I have a habit where I will, if I have an issue with somebody, I will pick up if I'm texting someone or emailing and there's a problem, pick up the phone, call them straight away.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how quickly that conversation changes. Very quickly. Like an example, when I used to run a nightclub back in Australia, for whatever reason, I didn't know the details. This guy realized I was one of the promoters for the venue, and he starts messaging me saying, one of your security guards put me in hospital. I'm going to come and shoot up the place. Blah 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 blah. Come full on I'm from a. There's some rough parts to where I'm from, and he said, I'm going to shoot the place. You watch. I'm going to tell me who that security guard is. I'm going to kill him. Blah 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 blah. Just called him. I just didn't even answer. Just called him straight away. And it's like a Sunday morning. I've just worked till 5 a.m. The first thing I waked up to, straight on the phone. and he starts off going, I'm just listening. And then eventually he stopped. And I said, you all good? And he goes, yeah, I just got out of hospital. I don't know what happened. I'm like, look, I can't help you with what you want, but I also think it might be a bad idea to try and come and shoot up the place. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, but I just, and then we just talked, and eventually yeah.
He needed to be.
And I never heard from him again.
Right. That's what we're missing, man. We're missing relationship. We're missing being heard, being seen, being felt, being celebrated, being met. You don't get met online. Right? You don't get met if your only friend circle's activity is getting blackout drunk every fourth night. You get met when you sit down and you get real and you go, hey man, I miss you. Hey man, I appreciate this about you. Hey man, you've said you want to do this stuff and you're not doing it. I think you can do it. We're missing what's real. Our food's not real. Our conversation's not real. Here in the West, our politicians aren't real. The system's falling apart. We're looking at religion, like everything that we hung our hat on, that we used to say this is real, is now crumbling around us. And we haven't had a new paradigm come through. So a lot of people...
It's up to us to create that.
It's up to us to create it.
Yeah. I'm conscious of your time, so I've just got one more question. We didn't get into any of the business stuff I wanted to talk to.
We can. I have another 15 minutes if you need.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I just got an email that came across that was like canceling my call, so we're good.
All right, brilliant. Well, that's good. Okay. Let's quickly dig into the business side of things. So
sure.
There's a lot of philosophy around what you're doing, right? And for philosophy to take root, it needs community. Yeah. So how have you gone about building your community around this philosophy? Beautiful.
So a guy reached out to me, Adam, like 5-6 years ago. Was in the middle of the country and was like, hey, read your book, loved it, started meditating. Actually, I hadn't even written the book yet. He was like, hey, I just started meditating. He was a cop. And I was like, now the other guys in my department have found out and they're making fun of me. Do you have like a community of men? And first I was like, motherfucker, like your people, law enforcement has the highest rates of divorce, suicide, alcoholism. Like you should all be meditating. God damn it.
Oh yeah.
And so I told him, I was like, I don't, but I'm starting one. So hang on. And so I started an online community called the Uncivilized Nation. We have about 300 dudes in it. We also have guys that have gone through various training or been with us long enough who have opened their own local groups. So groups in Los Angeles, a group in Boston, group in Austin, group in England, right? Of like a guy who will every 3 weeks get a group of guys together in person. COVID kind of made this hard, but they're coming back online. And they'll run through the same curriculum. So we all will give them journal prompts or prompts for the meeting. You know, like my biggest success this week, my biggest failure, the thing I wish I'd heard from my father that I didn't, the way I'm struggling with my sexuality is, etc. It doesn't matter. We have this support system now, 300 men deep on a platform where someone can write in and be like, hey guys, just hit a home run, and he gets celebrated. Nowhere else in his life is he getting celebrated. Or, hey guys, my wife left last night. Don't know what I'm going to do. You got 5 phone numbers put in the chat. Like, call me. Right? And we do in-person gatherings. We just had one here a couple weeks ago. Like, hey, whoever can get to Denver, we're going to race go-karts We're going to cook meat. We're going to shoot guns. We're going to go hiking. And for like an hour, we're going to talk about our fucking feelings. So come
I love that.
Right?
I love that.
We do stuff like that. We have workshops that we have get-togethers that way. In 3 weeks, we're getting anybody who's been through our leadership course like a free workshop here in Denver on how they can how they can run their own workshops. So it's like
I want to talk to you about this offline, because a friend of mine has tried this and he's going down a similar space of like development. This was a guy who did the ice baths. And I messaged him after talking to Connor. I'm like, dude, we need to like really dig into this like community, because it's not there. So maybe we can chat afterwards. And
sure.
And he said, when I get back to Australia, let's talk about it. I think it's super so important.
It's needed, right? Like I've had these guys over to my house. It doesn't matter what the reason. I have 25 guys here on a Sunday morning, and we'll meditate. We'll go sit in the cold bath. We'll talk about shit that's real. Men used to get in the same room with each other, or we used to sit around a fire, or we used to go hunting. We did something that had an activity that afterwards we're like, so how the hell are you really? And that to me is how we built this thing.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so it's very one-to-one though, isn't it? It's like, how do you then scale?
How do I scale that?
Yeah, because that's a very critical part, right?
I mean, our plan is to get 1,000 men in it. Right. So we just need teams. We need team leaders. We need a leadership program, which we have. Like my right-hand man, Dave Boyd, is an ex-cop. So he knows like all the structure of like, you need lieutenants, you need sergeants, you need people in key positions. So, I mean, there's probably 200 of these guys I've never met, never hung out with. Hopefully I will, but they're on their own team. They follow my lead. I disseminate the information, but their unique relationships are more important to them than my relationship to them is. That's how you scale it.
You made mention of the format and the structure. I think that's also a very masculine quality: structure, format, like a lot of clear direction.
For sure.
And I've had a couple of conversations with some women about this in the past, and going back to the whole equality element, and like men being predominantly in the higher end roles of a lot of corporate structures and stuff, which is, again, it is changing, it is developing, and the see me, be me element is there. But I listened to something a little while ago that kind of made me realize there is what the problem might be, which was I'm going to paraphrase it, but there was a woman CEO that was telling a story, or she was a C-level executive in a business, and she sat there and she said, the deals weren't getting done in the office. The deals were getting done out on the ocean when they were all surfing together. Every morning, the the C-level team would go surfing together, and they would talk about business. They would talk about the next deals. And it was predominantly all the men going, because they are the ones that want to go do that. So she just started doing it. She didn't try and fight the structure. She understood what it was and became part of it. And then in the process of being a part of it, she joined the boys club.
Yeah.
And she was welcome. Like, everyone is welcome. That's the interesting part about it. You know what I mean? Like, you're all welcome. And in that process, she began to get in the conversations where things would led to her promotions. And I found that really interesting. And the second piece was that this society, sure, there's, the patriarchy is a part of this, but the patriarchy has come from a place of order, of people at scale. And to order people at scale, you need systems, you need processes, you need, the English's approach of government into state, into local, into that's fed through the people is a very masculine approach to keeping order in a society, and it seems to have worked. There are a lot of, you look at Australia, you look at America, you look at Canada, you look at parts, a big chunk of South Africa. All of these countries are doing pretty well in the grand scheme of things, and they've all been led off the back of the English approach to managing people through systems.
Sure.
And that at the core of it is the patriarchy.
Sure.
So if people want to break the patriarchy down, what are you going to replace it with?
I used to ask that question a lot.
I don't think anyone has an answer. No one's got an answer because right now this is a very complex development system that has been built slowly over time, over thousands of years of people unable to control the environments around them to allow people to think about the patriarchy, because they're no longer getting eaten by like a saber-toothed tiger. So you can stop and reflect and think about all these things.
Yeah.
And that's, again, it's all very masculine.
Yeah.
So, and I might get cancelled for saying all of this, but to my female friends and any females that are listening here, you can change society, but you need to understand and integrate into it before you can make any actual lasting change. I feel like the brute force stuff creates extremes that are not good for anybody. So anyway, that was a complete side note, and I use my last.
You can even speak to it that the feminine has changed the way business is done. If you look at tech companies, it isn't just the brute, like all you're going to do is produce, all you're going to do is work, we don't care about you, right? There's like ping pong tables, there's therapists on staff, they get coaching, there is longer periods of maternity leave and paternity leave, both. There has been an influence of the feminine on the structure itself. And there's also the largest number of solopreneurs are women. People who say, I want to do business, but I'm not going to do it within this rigid structure. I'm not a woman, but I'm not in a corporate structure, nor will I ever be. Do I have a structure of my business? Yes. But 60% of my staff is female. So it's not just this rigid, like email note to email note. Like there's humanity in it. There's feeling in it. We open our meetings by saying, like, how are you really? You have a minute, like, talk to me. How are you really? I want to know who's having a baby. I want to know who's getting divorced. We need to know, because that's how we run a holistic business. Right? And if you want an interesting note, listen to Michaela Boehm, same last name as me, but we're not related, who will say that the Western masculine business structure doesn't work with the female nervous system most of the time. You will have outliers who definitely can fit into it, but most women in that structure end up burnt out, depressed, anxious, angry, not good with the over competition, not good with the lack of cooperation, not good with the hours. It's super linear. It doesn't take a cycle into account. It doesn't take the menstrual cycle into account. It's like,
I was about to say that.
Can do it, but they don't work well within it.
And they get depleted.
Completely depleted.
Process. Yeah.
So that's why you have women-led businesses that are brilliant and fuck shit up in the world, because they actually are more geared towards the feminine nervous system.
I've never thought about it in that way of the solopreneur and all of these kind of subcontractor. It's only very recent, and it's probably come in. It's very fluid and is quite feminine in the approach. I've never thought of it that way. It's not the hustle, grind, got to do it, get up it. Some people are, but it's I'm doing this on my terms, in my time. Exactly. I'm going to do it when I feel right to do it, and I'm still going to do it well.
Yeah, and then women are crushing it.
Yeah.
Like I know multiple 7-8 figure business owners who are like, we follow the cycles. We were like, we literally are doing things in a very intelligent way. Of course, it's good business. It just doesn't need the rigidity that so many men are like, fuck yeah, give me a task, give me a uniform, give me a title, tell me what to do and when to be here, and I will thrive. I don't want to ask questions. I just want to be told what to do. But the feminine, you're right, is like far more fluid and far more colorful and emotional as it should be. But they're crushing it equally. So I say celebrate that. Yes, see me, be me, but like also, you guys, do you want to go into a male-dominated profession that you may not be interested in, or do you want to do business on your own terms in exactly the way that you want to do it? And by the way, probably out-earn exponentially this job that you're hunting for. And I don't care where people work. I don't give a fuck. Everybody work wherever makes you happy. But just know, ladies listening, women listening, there are other options. And men listening, there are other options, right? There are no rules. This is 2023. You can make money with a cell phone. You can make money with a laptop. You can like you and I are talking. This is a business right here. Two guys just shooting the shit on a mic. Like it's endless the number of ways that people make good money.
Yeah, I really like that. I've never thought of it that way before. So, well, let's. How much time do you got left? Gotta go soon. 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Oh, all right. Okay. We should do another one. There's so many questions here that I would have loved to have chatted to you about. So I'm just trying to think of. There's so many here. Okay. Look, I'm just going to skip to my last question.
Sure.
What's the meaning of life?
To leave it better than you found it. I think that's it. To leave it better than you found it, and to experience as much of it as you possibly can. That's my view. I want to get on my deathbed. And brother, I worked with people in hospice for a year of the Year to Live project. I've been with people as they die. To get to that point and look back and go, wow, I made a difference. Whether that difference is in one single life, or that difference is in an entire community, an entire city, an entire country, or the entire world. And I'm here having known that like I squeezed the fucking juice out of life. I'm not here with regrets. Do I get to do everything that I want to do? No, that's a child's mind, or that's an adolescent dream. But have I gotten to the core experiences that I wanted to experience? And have I left it better than I found it?
Brilliant. Thanks,
have
Traver.
I bought Traver Boehm's book? I should have led with that one and then just stopped. Been like, that's my answer.
What else? Traver, thank you. I appreciate you a lot. Thank you. This was a wonderful conversation. Oh my.
Thank you. Beautiful job.
Thanks, my man.